Tell me when. Do 3, 2, 1. Can you do 3, 2, 1? Good afternoon. Welcome to this episode of Spilling the Tea with 4C. This episode's titled, More Milton. Don't skip this one. So, Milton,
Steve,
why does a customer buy AdGlobe's high flow sampler?
so there are two customers out there, two types of customers. The first would be somebody who's already doing measurement. You get the service side, service providers, energy companies themselves, and they're already doing measurement. And they're using an old, aged back rack high flow sampler. So that's a group that would want this product. The other side of it is those two groups thinking about getting into compliance with all this new EPA compliance, Quad OB, coming into the picture, maybe this fall, maybe 2024. So you got a lot of new players out there, and they're wanting the best. They want the latest, the greatest. We already know all of the issues with the back rack high flow sampler. It was a long laundry list of stuff that had to be worked out. So if you're looking for a modern, state-of-the-art technology that's direct measurement, we've poured over 17 years into this project. AdGlobe has, to resolve all of those issues, to deliver a product that is EPA compliant, it's fast, it's accurate, it's third-party tested, and it's a joy to work with compared to the previous technology because it is a slick design, and the list goes on from there. So
Beautiful. If you have 2 minutes in an elevator with a potential customer, and you have to deliver that compelling message, what is AdGlobe's compelling message for the high flow sampler?
So we've put together a product based on over 17 years of experience. And where did this experience come from? AdGlobe had delivered over half of the back rack high flow samplers. It was about 450 is the number. And so that's a lot of product that was delivered to market, but the experience and the expertise behind that, and knowing the knowledge base that went into the research and development of this product, it's the result of years of experience and a wish list that was a mile long. And so our message is, you want the best. You have a very important job, and you want to make sure that your operators who are working in an extreme environment, it's a harsh environment out there. You don't want to be hamstrung with something that's big and bulky and going to weigh you down, because you do need other tools on your job to find leaks. So you want this product because it's slick, it's lightweight, it's got far better accuracy. It's 50% improvement on the sampling capacity from its predecessor. And as far as being able to calibrate this thing, you can do it. You can do it fast. You can take your measurements and get them fast. The data analysis, the data capture itself is far superior than anything that was before it. And so we know that our customers, we're already getting that type of feedback. We've got a good customer base that we've started out with, and we stay close to them. So we're looking to find out what else we can do with it. And it's more of a software issue at this point, little tweaks. But that's why you want this product. You want to start out right. And so if you're looking for a fresh start, or you're looking to replace what you had previously, this is the product for you.
Fantastic. So someone's out there, they've got an old backrat high flow sampler, doesn't work anymore. Now they have a new option that's here.
Absolutely. Far superior.
or if the customer has a couple of the old Baccarat units and they're shipping that thing around, then the shipping cost is driving them crazy and going through the roof. Now they can buy another unit. They have a more modern unit, and they no longer have to ship the other one around so much.
It's funny you mentioned shipping because the weight and size of this it's half of what the back rack was. It's less than 10 pounds, the unit itself. So you don't see a big bulky instrument here. You can fit this in half of a Samsonite bag. They've got a big bag out there. So half of that bag you can fit this whole thing in comfortably and put your other tools in the other side of the bag. The previous back rack sampler would take up that whole bag.
Excellent. So how does it work? How does this unit work?
So it's a high volume sampler. Think of it like a vacuum cleaner. You've got your main sampling line that is pulling in a sample. In this case, we're up to 12.36 cubic feet per minute. Back rack was doing about 8, maybe a little bit better than 8 cubic feet on a fully charged battery. So we've increased the capacity of the sampling rate by 50% and better leak capture. And so inside the instrument, you're measuring, you're pulling in air, you're pulling in the fugitive methane emissions themselves, and you have a sensor that is pulling and measuring a concentration within that mixed air sample line. And so you're measuring flow, you're measuring concentration to derive your volumetric leak rate. Now, this does have 2 sensors on it. So we've got 2 sensor blocks, and 2 sensor blocks is important. It was on the back rack unit, and it was well thought out. And so we didn't see any reason to not include a secondary sampling sensor on this. And so you want the ability to have your background looked at. You want to consider your background in case you have multiple leaks in the area. You want to subtract that from the leak that you're measuring. And the other reason you want to have a background is to use for quality assurance, to ensure that you've got complete capture of the leak you're intending to measure. Because you might have some slippage, you might have the leak is floating around and it hasn't been completely captured. So if you have an OGI operator there looking with the camera, you can see this stuff pretty readily, but that's not a practical situation today, having 2 people out there. So I can just demonstrate, So on the sampling nozzle here.
Here's our emission source.
Okay. So here's our background. It's pulling in a sample here, main sample line. So we're going to go up to the leak, and assuming that we're getting complete capture, we're going to go around the circumference of the nozzle here to make sure that we do, in fact, have captured leak. And we're going to see that on our display. And so
the reading that's coming from this particular one will show on the display.
Yes.
And if you circumnavigate the perimeter here, you should have a reading that is consistent with the background in the area.
Correct. That's the proper method a measurement operator should do, and not just assume that they're getting complete capture until they have just done a quick sweep around the area, observed the background, and if they're not getting anything, then they can just leave it like that, get their measurement, save the data, and move on. Excellent.
That's an awesome device. So you mentioned the weight. You mentioned that is very handy, the background mechanism there. Mm-hmm. What other features? You mentioned a long laundry list of items. What are the other features of the new AdGlobe high flow sampler that are separate this product from the old Baccarat product?
So sensor technology was really important. The previous back rack was using a catalytic oxidation thermal conductivity. That was the sensor technology of its age back then, and it was practical. It was fairly reliable. but not nearly as reliable and accurate as what we have today. We're using non-dispersive infrared methane sensor. This methane sensor is tuned to the infrared spectrum for methane. Now, you do have some cross-sensitivity with other gases there, so we have an oxygen sensor on there as well to account for that. So if we have the influence of heavy hydrocarbons on our sample, the oxygen displacement method is used to account for that and ensure that you have an accurate methane measurement. So that was very important, being able to get the resolution down as well on this technology sensor. The sensor had to be able to get down below what we had previously seen and reliably read the gas for the full concentration up to 100% gas by volume. The previous technology had a crossover issue at about 5% gas by volume, switching from catalytic to thermal, and that was a wishy-washy area. It was erratic at times. If you had a leak in that area, getting the thing to make a decision on flipping over. So that issue goes away with this technology also, and you're not getting the poisoning effect, the degradation of your sensor either with non-dispersive infrared. There's an LED light in this sensor, and so it's tuned to methane, so it sees that wavelength in the infrared spectrum, and that's where you get your reading. So you have much longer life on these sensors as well. You're not going to be changing them out like you were previously. And so accuracy level on this in a lab is as good as 1%. But for our purposes, for the field, 5% is what we say.
Call it 95%, but up to 99%. And how about the battery life? You talked a little bit about the battery life last time. What was the battery life of the old Baccarat? What's the battery life of this new device and the battery indicator? So that was a problem, and it was a source of pain for everybody who was doing measurements. The previous had used the nickel metal hydride batteries, and so they were big, they were bulky. You could get 4.5 hours out of a new battery, and a lot of people were not even getting that. As those batteries diminished over time, they went to 3 hour and then a 2 hour life capacity, and so that'd be rather annoying.
Well, the more annoying thing was not knowing where you were as far as the percent battery that was left. It would report a voltage display starting out with 5 volts, and it would quickly go down to 4.7, and then sit at 4.7, and then you didn't know when it was going to stop after that once it dropped below that level. So we've got a lithium-ion polymer battery in here, and the other really good thing about the choice of the sensor technology, it's super low power. So that allows us to use this LiPo battery and give it up to 10 hours of operating time full on. And so we also have more than 65 hours of standby time. That should be sufficient for a normal weeks of work in sampling, going from station to station. But you have a very distinct reading on the instrument itself and on the display, indicating the battery percent. And so that's important.
So it really goes from 100 to 0 instead of going down for a while and then appearing to be at 75 and going to 0 at an unknown time.
Yes, yeah. It can wear a person out who's worked all day long and it hasn't got their equipment out of the vehicle and into their hotel room and deciding, should I charge this or not? So if this thing comes back with 50% battery, you probably you're going to be fine the next day. But if it says 90% on the battery, you've got 9 hours left on it. So far improved. The transparency of that information. But again, the low power sensor allows us to do that.
We talked a little bit last time about Andre. Can you give us a little more feel for the flavor of the owner and one of the driving forces behind this AdGlobe?
So Andre Gorski, I met him back in 2005, and he was the biggest buyer and seller of the back rack high flow samplers globally, and so it was a very good relationship because I've learned so much with all those huge measurement campaigns. There were over 35 projects that AdGlobe did in Eastern Europe, Asia. I think they did a few in Africa. Now, they sold the product, over 450 back rack samplers between Eastern Europe, Asia, Europe, and Africa. The bulk of them really were in that Eastern European area, and they were buying them in packs of 30, 40, sometimes 50. So they did a tremendous job managing those projects, and it required a lot of training too. So I was back and forth over there training their people on how to train people. And so way before that, I did the feasibility studies with Andre. He had to do proof of concept. So there was a number of feasibility studies. They'd get me out there with the back rack. And so I did a lot of that measurement, understanding what they were up against. And they merely took those feasibility studies and exploded them out across the regions. And then, so Andre himself, he's born in St. Petersburg. He grew up in Latvia. He spent 16 years in Hungary, but he grew up in Latvia. And he did go to Moscow. He went to the University of Moscow. But he's also, he didn't have all this time in Russia. He moved to Italy. He moved to France. He's an incredible chef. He went to the Le Cordon Bleu course in France. So his cooking is amazing. You want to be around this guy in the kitchen and get the privilege of eating. Fantastic chef. And so he speaks English, of course. I don't know how many other languages he speaks. But when all was said and done with these projects, they've moved on. And so they were in the best position to answer the call. This call to action back in 2017 is the flag went up when Backrack ended it. They discontinued it. And so I was needling these guys to get into this. I was needling a few other people to get into it as well. But he rose up, and there's other folks involved who did a lot of this work, who moved a lot of those samplers, and they're involved in the project too. So they took the challenge up, and where's this thing made? It's 100%. It's 100% assembled in Florida, and so the general part of this comes from Latvia, and then you got hose parts that come from Europe. Of course, you can't avoid the China, the small chips, smaller parts. How much I don't know, but every manufacturer has that issue. They got to get something from China, but. You have a great product that comes from Latvia. Latvia is, great partner, an ally of the United States. We're NATO partners, and Andre spent a lot of time in Latvia itself. So you have a mishmash of parts.
But they're primarily assembled in Florida.
100%, absolutely.
Well, it's a beautiful unit. Sounds like it's been a labor of love for you over the years, not just the Backrack unit, but now the new AdGlobe high flow sampler.
Yeah, we're getting great feedback from customers. I call these people on a regular basis because I want to know. And my use with the product is limited because I'm in the role of sales. I do the traveling, I do the conferences. And so I get to show the product and demonstrate the product with the customers. That's part of it. That's where I get my experience. But getting back with the ones who are using it again and again, 100% customer satisfaction. And so we've listened to customers, and we had to make some changes to our software, the performance. And you have a cell phone. This isn't based on an Android platform, so it's going to come with an Armor X Android phone. It's a shockproof phone. It's IP68 and 69, so it's waterproof. Yes. So you'll Bluetooth to this instrument. You have a display on the side here as well, but you'll control the instrument from your Android device. You don't have to use this Android device. You can use whatever Android device you want. This one does have magnets on the back of it, so it's very simple to just magnetize this to the pipe itself, to dial in, touch your readings, save, and so we'll continue to think about other accessories we can put with this. So far, there haven't been any issues we're getting from customers. But the Android platform allows us to do these firmware updates and do them fast. I've heard that it's pretty restricted with iOS. So dealing with one system makes it simple. And so you've got the ability. Gee whiz, you've got other accessories here that I'm looking at. This is one of them.
So tell me about this.
All right. So this accessory was a collapsible cone. You might have seen pictures of me in some sort of a brochure or presentation with an orange traffic cone on top of a compressor station, doing a blowdown measurement from suction unit valve. Very practical tool was that traffic tool. So these guys took the concept, and these are handmade, very good design. You can do up to an 8-inch open-ended line with this, and you've got the connector to the hose itself. So you just switch out the nozzle to this in case you got to do an open-ended line, a vertical.
So this is a custom deal. Y'all figured out this is what you really needed, and somebody built this thing, and now you can just it's collapsible. So if you don't have that much headroom here, you can
use
slip
what you
in
need
there on that leak and move this thing around to where you want it to be.
Yes, and so it has some versatility, but it's really intended for those vertical open-ended lines. Anything from a 1-inch up to an 8-inch, and that they're all over the board as far as what you'll find at a compressor station. But it makes leak capture very good. Now, if you happen to exceed the threshold level of this, we just found out that they had a packing measurement. I was just talking to a customer this week, and they said they measured a packing measurement at 21 cubic feet per minute with the gas flow meter 2.0. It has the suction capacity of 12.36. That's the number coming from the blower itself. But if you have to force a measurement through there, because beyond there, you're going to feel that gas blowing. So if you can capture that leak, you can send it through the instrument still, and you'll get a relative measurement. And that's the thing that is interesting. The back rack only went up to 10.5 cubic feet, and because of flow dynamics, and when it stopped. And because of the unique flow dynamics of our device, you can measure up to, at least we know in this case, 21 cubic feet per minute. And so they've bagged that also, and so we're understanding something we didn't know before, that yes, you can force the gas through the instrument at a higher rate. It'll only pull 12.36 on its own.
You can push 21 through.
Yeah, and so we don't know what the upper limit is yet. I don't know, and that's something we got to do additional testing on. But it's very helpful. You could use the bag method with the calibrated bags easily with this if you had a leak that was unmanageable to the point where you couldn't measure it here, right?
You mentioned training. How long would it take a technician who's some familiarity with field instruments, not brand new, but has some familiarity? How long would it take them to get trained on this?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was a big issue with back rack. There were a lot of moving parts and accessories, mostly the accessories that just you leave in the box and never use. And so training time on that device was pretty much an 8-hour day. And you slogged through it because you really had to open the dang thing up. You had to open that instrument up to get into the guts of it, to really point out, here's where you're going to manage your sensors, you replace your sensors. You're going to have to change this filter, change that filter. So with this, because you don't need to do any of that anymore in the unique design, I can train somebody in how to operate this within an hour. And so it's intuitive, it's simple to operate. There's two parts: turning this instrument on and then turning your phone on, Bluetooth them together, and then you control the unit, and it's go time. Understanding any other features and how to get the data out. Okay, give me an hour and a half, and we'll go out, do some measurements, come back, and then we'll pull that data off. So if I can't get it done in less than 2 hours, there's something wrong. But that, compared to having to spend a full day on just bottom up, wearing people out. And so in this day and age, you want people to get simple. Simple is important. You want these guys to be able to hit the ground running with it. And granted, kind of like OGI, you can train a technician on how to do the measurements, or how to turn the camera on or turn the instrument on and use it. But you can't really train them on the techniques and the time required. There's kind of a fine art to it. Every user's different on that end. But on this end, we do want to go out there and do as wide of a variety of measurements as we can to train that technician on what they're going to use for.
Nearly every technician would come up with the same set of results quite quickly, whereas with OGI, the field use is very important. I know we did a lot of offshore platform testing with OGI cameras. And we did a little experiment one time and sent out a thermographer with several thousand hours of experience, and then a thermographer that had just completed the thermography training. And the thermographer that had several thousand hours found 3 times as many leaks as the person who had just been trained in thermography. So right, I know on the OGI camera, experience was a really big deal.
Yeah.
I think that became a bit of a headache on the Appendix K portion.
Absolutely.
For those folks.
Yeah, and the weather, every day is different. The weather conditions from, winter to spring, winter to summer can wreak havoc on your ability to.
Cloudy days. Background temperature differentials,
rain,
a lot of different factors involved, for sure.
And you really don't have those factors with this tool because it's direct measurement. You're going up to whatever it is you got to measure, like a vacuum cleaner. You just want to get those emissions into the pipe, and it doesn't matter what operator is using it. As long as they're getting complete leak capture, they're going to get the same results. From technician to technician.
That's beautiful. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Milton. It's great to catch up with you again. Great to get some more feedback. And the whole process was very, very informative.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your time in the business and your experience with our listeners and viewers.
My pleasure.